and I'm gonna say we're live. I
We're
think we're
live.
I think we're live on YouTube.
Are we live
We're
on YouTube?
It looks like we're live on YouTube.
I'm waiting to
Let
see if we're live on YouTube.
Probably
It
live on
looks
YouTube.
like we're live on YouTube. It
We may
looks
be.
like it.
I can see my own face loaded up on the stream. Life is
Yeah.
good.
I can see myself moving. I can see myself waving after about 5 seconds.
It all works out. Hello! How's it going?
Good, how are you, my friend?
I am doing all right. Living
Doing
the
all right.
dream.
Living the dream.
I am fabulous and fancy and fantastic.
Why are you so
And
fabulous, fantastic, and fancy? Girl, where'd you get those done?
there's uh feisty little redhead I know that
Hmm.
was like shloop 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 and painted my nails tonight. And it won't come off. I I tried. I
Tried.
tried.
Oh no.
Didn't work.
Oh
So
no.
I have glittery wine colored fingers now.
Oh,
Not fingernails, fingers.
finger.
That'll buff out. I just need to
the
take some steel wool to my hands or something. That's a thing people do, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Steel wool. Just
yeah.
just rub it off.
So
Oh dear.
yeah. How's your day?
But it's good. It was a day off, but it didn't really feel I was running around like a crazy person.
Hmm?
I got up, I went immediately to get my hair cut, and then I met a friend for lunch,
Mhm.
brunch. I had chicken and waffles. Um,
Ah, but where did you have chicken and waffles?
broken yolk.
Okay,
Yeah,
that is the place to have chicken and waffles?
it is a place to have chicken and waffles. Oh my god, they're so good.
They're bennies where they'll do, like, a Benny on a waffle instead of on an English muffin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. They make some damn good food, and their coffee, nice dark roast, wonderful. Anyway, not reviewing breakfast today. We're talking about beer and tabletop gaming because
We
that
are.
is the fun part. But first
And
of
and
all, we need some beers.
we do. It is technically the name of the podcast and the name of the game.
It's
So,
true.
I'll be rolling into this nice, fancy dragon mug that a good friend
And
got us.
I got this
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
Yeah, Union beer. In
Union
in
beer.
interesting topic considering
Dortmunder.
all of the RPG unionization it's, coming
Yeah,
through right now.
there's another thing too. I only have 3 beers this week.
I do as well, because
Oh, really?
we're gonna be talking about the elephant in the room
So,
and the
the
elephant in the beer. All of our beers tonight are by Delirium because
delirium.
deliciousness.
And I've actually got a story about delirium tonight. Just a short story. It won't be too long. But we'll roll for our beers first.
You know, I may have made a grievous error. Hold on a
Oh
second.
no. Oh no.
Well, Delirium are not twist offs.
They are not twist offs.
Sack. Good old
Yes, there
Swiss
we
Army
go.
knife. There we go.
Swiss Army knife. All right.
3, 2,
2,
1.
1.
All right. What do you got?
I got
Because
a 1.
I have
1.
I have a red.
I have delirium nocturne.
I have Delirium Red strong fruit.
That is going to be a very red berryish cherry, I believe.
I like it.
Um,
Well, I don't know if I like it yet. I've had Delirium before.
yeah. So delirium normally comes in around 8 to 8.5%. Come in
Mhm.
these really cool kind of ceramic bottles.
Mhm.
But I believe they're just painted bottles.
Yeah.
They look ceramic, they aren't. They used to be, I believe.
Now, I will say this is making a mess out of my office desk
Oh yeah.
trying to get this thing open.
Uh best thing.
Don't do that.
For those of you playing the home game, Riley just popped open the beer too fast and it just exploded.
As you get older, it happens to all men. Well, really anybody with a a beer that's opened too fast. Wink.
It's true. Wink.
We're inclusive about our premature beer head. Oh, it's very, very red. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Wow.
Oh my God. I am pouring
Wow.
beer like a moron these days. My
It's
God.
okay. Don't be so hard on yourself. Even the head is red. It's a redhead, just like
Ah!
me. Oh,
So,
it's very, very pink.
so do you know how delirium got its name?
Oh, it tastes like Swedish berries.
8.5% Swedish berries.
Mm,
Um, so delirium, the rumor about the name, I don't know how true this story is. It is in the book that you can get about delirium,
hmm,
but the beer was nameless for quite a while.
'kay.
It was just named by the brewing company that you see down there. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I'm really bad at that. Huyghe.
Huey? Hoy?
Huey? Hoy?
Hoy?
Hoy? Anyway, somebody's going to correct us at some point in our lives. It's fine.
Yep.
Um, and they were sitting around drinking the beer because they were like, okay, we have to have a name for this. So they sat around and they just started drinking and drinking and drinking. They were literally sitting there drinking for about 8 hours
Mhm.
to when one guy pops open a bottle, just looks at the beer and goes, I'm going to be delirious if I drink one more beer.
Nah, that
And
works.
hence the name. And the one guy was like, that's the name.
Only in German?
Only in German. Um, or no, not
Is
German.
Delirium not a, German beer?
No, it is Belgium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was about to say, I was like, wait a minute. Wait. Yes.
Yeah, it is Belgium. It's a .be.
Yeah. .be. Yeah. Yeah. Belgian beer. And it's a family owned brewery, and it is still a family owned brewery.
Ooh.
It is not owned by any conglomerate or anything like that. It is passed down from generation to generation.
You know,
Really, really cool.
it occurs to me that if they're in Belgium, they're while they might be speaking Dutch, they might also be speaking German.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
also fair. But there's also one other story about Belgium or about this beer, the Pink Elephant.
Mhm.
They were trying to experiment with the labeling. They weren't able to find anything that really suited it until an artist came in one day. A young
Mhm.
college artist came in and said, "Hey, I know you're having problems with the label. I will draw you a label if I get a case of beer." And
I
they were
like it.
like, "Sure." He
That
drew the
that
pink elephant, and they were like, "That's it."
it works. It
And
that
it
that is
works.
good enough for
That
me.
is good enough. And again, I don't know the validity of these stories, but I think it's absolutely great storytelling
It
and just the history of that kind of thing.
so I meant to ask,
Hmm.
did you get the Nocturnum or did you get the Tremens?
I got the Nocturnum, which
Okay,
is the dark kind of version of the beer. So,
so this tastes like incredibly boozy Swedish berries or Swedish
oh,
fish.
oh, good God, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
like it's very boozy, um, candy.
oh yeah.
Mm.
And I mean, this is it's kind of hard to describe it because there's that you get a little bit of that roasty note on here, but then you have that 8.5% right behind it. So you're getting that booziness coming from it.
You know, the red is actually only 8% compared to the others.
I forgot my percentages.
Sacrilege.
Somebody is going to kill me online.
Oh, it's made
Uh
out of elderberries. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um there's all sorts of kind of things, and I mean, like, this is a classic beer and I need to brush up on my European beers.
Mm.
So this is a great timing for me because European beers are synonymous with classic. Very classic labeling, very classic tastes, very classic yeast structures, things like that. They haven't changed in over 100 years, really.
Yeah.
unless you start looking at the newer stuff, which the newer stuff is going to have, some of the uh newer kind of hops that are around the world, like things like that. But again, those are in the city centers and stuff like that.
Speaking of Europe
Speaking of Europe.
and, the elephant in the room.
Hmm.
So, about a week ago, uh, a group called the European RPG Studios Union
Oh, okay.
emerged.
Yep.
And
Interesting.
essentially, what they're looking to do is they're looking at different RPG studios and they're forming a union for how employees are treated and handled in the wake of the whole Wizards of the Coast shenanigans. We'll call it shenanigans.
Shenanigans. You know what? Shenanigans is a great place to get food, and it's no. um,
They're going to push for government subsidies for smaller publishers and things like that. That sort of thing is becoming a little more prevalent. Europe's always been a great place for gaming in general and small scale publishing.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that it kind of leads into what we were going to talk about tonight, and
Yes.
it's it's the OGL for
The
for
OGL.
for the lack of a better term. Um, Branding in
OGL.
general. I like the kind of segue it a little bit
Yeah.
because I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of it
Hmm.
and where it's sitting right now and like
And
how it
I'll have.
how
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
how I feel about it and what
Okay.
the community at large.
Yep, and
Um,
I will throw in some antidotes from the beer industry as well as we go throughout the night.
Antidotes,
Antidotes?
anecdotes,
Anecdotes.
anecdotes.
Anecdotes. Didn't I say that? Or did I
You
say
said
antidotes?
you said antidotes because we've been poisoned by 8.5% Swedish berries. I'm just gonna say
No, the Swedish fish.
the drunk condition in D&D is technically poisoned. So,
You know what? That's fair.
um, so how much do you know about the original OGL license? Aside from like the things that have spammed our Discord for the past month.
um, what I understand from the OGL license and what I understand about gaming licenses, gaming rules, etc., is that you cannot copyright rules.
Correct?
Or yeah, you cannot copyright rules. Um, anybody is free to use base rules as long as it is accredited, I believe.
Ish. Yeah. So like
Ish.
so you could make so Legal Eagle and Matt Colville did a really good video on this
Mhm.
recently. And Legal Eagle does amazing
I
content.
I and I watched Legal Eagle's thing on this. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to play the I I still have a hard time understanding everything going on with the
Yeah.
legalese of it because I'm not a legal person.
So say for example you really like Monopoly.
Yes, I do not like Monopoly, but I'm going to pretend because I'm playing
S-
along.
Say you were a third party company from a third party publisher and you wanted to remake Monopoly exactly as it appeared in the box.
Oi, guys, this guy over here has a great game. It's called Monopoly. I really like it. I think we should make this into our own game.
But we're going to rename every one of the properties and we're going to rename like specifically just the properties and we're going to remove any of the trademarked Monopoly guy from all of the imagery.
We are going to call this Alberta-opoly. It's going to be great.
And you kind of can
Yeah.
because they don't own the roll dice, go around, land on a thing, draw a card. It's not really a thing.
No.
That's why you see dime a dozen copies of certain things.
Of
So
Monopoly.
in general, and we ran into this ourselves. Logomancy did.
Mhm.
We did the Roll for Wishes campaign for Make a Wish,
Yes.
and David did all of those modules up with the different folks that contributed, and then we did all the editing and proofing and publishing for them, and made sure that they were well legal, right? Because the last thing you want is for you to put something out and then have somebody hit a lawsuit. It's
Yeah.
unlikely, but it's a thing.
Mhm.
So the OGL comes down to two parts, and people often get them really confused.
'Kay.
One is the system reference document, the SRD.
Yes.
And if you go to like dndwiki.com and places like that, all of the mechanics and things that you see, those are all under the system reference document. Those are open things that they're like, you can use the system reference document if you're making a custom class or homebrew, whatever.
Right.
Um, as long as you attribute the thing that you're publishing to say, hey, we use the system reference document, here's the thing for it,
Right.
right?
That makes sense.
Um, there was a big misunderstanding of how the OGL worked. The OGL essentially exists because Wizards, as the current stewards of D&D,
Yes.
they have certain trademarks. Like the Beholder, for instance,
Is a
is
trademark.
is a trademarked intellectual property that Wizards owns. You can't use a Beholder in things. It's specifically excluded from the SRD. You can't use mind flayers. They're specifically excluded from the SRD. But you can use things like elves. Wizards doesn't own a trademark on that sort of thing. They lost a lawsuit a long time ago to the Tolkien estate. It was this whole
Yeah.
big thing. They existed long before that, but like there was the thing. Um, so they basically set up the OGL
Mhm.
for transparency and for peace of mind
Right.
because uh, in ye old times, and I mean this like
1970.
no, this is closer to like 10, 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Uh, l- Maybe closer to 12. So, Ryan Dancy and Brian Lewis, I think it was.
I
Yeah,
think I think I've heard that name,
yeah,
yes.
Brian Lewis. So, Brian Lewis, he works for was one of the founders of Azora Law. He's one of the primary guys looking at the Orc license now for Paizo.
Right. Yes, the one
And
that's getting put into, if I remember correctly, it is
yeah,
getting put into a, like, not, or like a
it's a trust.
library or a trust fund or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be managed as a trust, so no company owns it. It's just something that exists. So Ryan Dancy and Brian Lewis. Ryan Dancy used to be the vice president of Wizards of the Coast way back when, and they realized that D&D is kind of like rollerblades and Kleenex and that Band-Aid and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter what system you were playing D&D,
Yes,
right? Like
because yeah.
even when we were sitting around playing GURPS, it was D&D night. Like, it was the thing. So he's like, we are better served rather than having if 10 people are all playing at tables at a friendly local game store, rather than having them all playing different games, we'd rather them all be playing D&D with slightly different variant rules.
Yeah.
So they conceived of the open game license after looking at what was being done with Linux, because with Linux, everything the whole point of it is to be open source and the community makes it better and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Um, and when it comes down to it, D&D is if 5e is a great example of what happens when you let the community just create shit.
And there are so many amazing books and short story paths and
Mhm.
custom characters, custom spells, items, like, the list goes on.
Well, and we've talked about this before, like Horde of the Dragon Queen or Tyranny of Dragons was written by
Mhm.
Kobold Press,
Yes.
contracted from Wizards of the Coast, so it was done as a Wizards of the Coast product, but done by a third party publishing studio. We talked about
Yeah.
that a couple
Yeah,
episodes ago.
I think, yeah, I think we talked about that, yeah.
And so what we've basically seen is a giant boom and revitalization of D&D like as a core product or as a core brand,
Yes.
where 5e is just the base system that you're using, and there's so many adaptations. If you want to play Firefly in space, there's there's a source book for that,
Mhm.
right? And it's 5e compatible. We looked at the Star Wars 5e compatible game where it's basically the Star Wars or it's the 5e rule set but using Star Wars reskinning.
I have a Mass Effect one that somebody made.
Exactly, same sort of
I
thing.
There's a Iron Kingdoms one from the
Yep,
people who made oh my god. War Machine game.
yeah.
Good Christ.
So
Sorry.
in the long and short of it, Ryan Dancy's like, we would position ourselves better, and he's done 100 interviews at this point in the last like month or two,
Oh yeah.
talking about this. Where the community is better served by having access to more products that allow you to play D&D. And
Yeah.
5e's an excellent example of that. So, Brian Lewis, he's a lawyer. He was one of the lawyers for Wizards of the Coast at the time, basically drew up the OGL. And
Yeah.
the idea is that the intention behind it is that it would last forever and it would reference whatever the current SRD was at the time,
Yeah.
right? So if the SRD changed and was modified, the SRD was a separate document.
Yes.
And because it's bound to change, you might go to a different edition. They might want to include the artificer in it. They might want to include a bunch of stuff in it,
Going to
right?
4, going to 5, going to D&D
Well,
1.
fourth edition did
I
not have the OGL.
No, it did not. It had the SGL, I believe.
The GSL, the game system
GSL.
license. And the GSL was essentially uh OGL 1.1 that everybody was like, "Oh god, no." That was basically what the GSL was. Was
Mhm.
like, "We own everything forever. It will
And
be
you saw
ours."
and you saw how much third-party support there was for 4th edition. There wasn't
And people were like,
much.
"Oh, this is a terrible idea. We're gonna go and use the old OGL and make Pathfinder and a bunch of really cool source books." There's a lot of good Pathfinder and 3.5 stuff out there.
Pathfinder is, just I worked at a game warehouse.
Yeah.
It was one of my jobs where I was shipping out source books, I was shipping out D&D, and I was there during D&D 4 and Pathfinder.
Mhm.
The amount of Pathfinder stuff I sent out compared to D&D 4 was a huge difference.
Yep.
And it was and like the amount of War Machine, other type of games, like all the other RPG books
Yeah.
outsold D&D like crazy.
So it's interesting because and I've been playing D&D for a long time. And the everything's cyclical. History always repeats itself, right?
Yes.
3.5 or 3 and 3.5 came out and it was like a renaissance of gaming
Mhm.
for tabletop gamers
Oh yeah.
for a while. And we had talked about that previously on like Planescape. There was a long time there in the 90s where people didn't play D&D cuz like I want to tell stories, I don't want to kill monsters. But, everything has its niche.
Yeah.
And they got away from that and they went to 4th edition. 4th edition was from its very core designed to be paired with
An app.
a virtual tabletop. And they were developing it at the time, but the project fell through. And the rule
Yep.
set was completed and it was published, but the supporting thing that would allow you to use it fell through. Uh, on the MCDM channel, they run through a game called Dusk, which is a 4th edition campaign. And there's like, I don't know, like less than half a dozen episodes of it where they're playing 4th edition, but I think they're using Fantasy Grounds to play it. And it's great. It flows really well. It's really good because the mechanics in that really lend themselves to I click the button, I do the thing. I click the button, I do the thing.
Yeah.
But it takes away from, the storytelling is independent of the mechanics. And my issue with that, and maybe that'll be a good topic for another day, is if you read Fireball in the 4th edition uh, book and Fireball in the 3rd or 5th edition book, it's
Yeah.
like you conjure a massive mote of flame that drifts towards your enemies and explodes with a raucous like whoosh. In 4th edition, it's like you deal fire damage in X number of squares. K bye, thanks. Like it's
I click
they
spell, spell happen.
they removed all of the fluff and flavor from everything in favor of game mechanics, right?
Yeah.
Rather than striking that balance that had already always been there. But that being said, they they conceived of the original OGL with the idea that let's get creators in. Let's get people creating stuff because the more people we have that are creating, if they're creating anything, we want them to be creating for our game, our products. So here's the thing that allows you to do it. We don't take anything. It's just if they're if you make a product that's 5e compatible and they want to play it, they got to buy the player's handbook. There's a pretty good chance probably need a
Easy.
monster manual. And if we do a couple of good source books that go along with it, like Tasha's and Xanathar's and whatever, great.
People are going to buy it.
Maybe you want to set it in one of our worlds like Eberron. Kind of got to buy our book. It drives our books, right? And it it was met with massive success. And then this comes out and it's a complete 180 compared to what the community had come to expect.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to forget that companies are out to make a profit and benefit their shareholders when you feel like you're a part of something. And
Yeah.
people take ownership of the things that they love.
The
And
fandom takes control of the product.
yep. So, and again, much like Band-Aid and Rollerblade and everything else, like Wizards isn't even the second owner of D&D. They're kind of the third because, well, Gygax and
Gygax?
Arneson started it, and then they formed TSR the next year,
Right.
and they looked after it under TSR, and then TSR booted them in favor of like kind of wiping through the company and starting with a new board.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember the lady's name. Also a Williams, um, same as the current CEO for Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if there's any relationship there or not. I'd have to look it up, but basically ousted Gygax from his company and took it over and ran TSR into the ground. And Wizards of the Coast bought D&D from TSR when they were offloading a bunch of assets and stuff and started into it again because they has Wizards of the Coast wanted the IP so they could do things like make video games and like
Yeah.
have the residual rights for people that wanted to publish books and things like that. And then maybe keep a game going because it's a valuable IP.
Yep.
And maybe Wizards of the Coast hangs on to it for another 10 years. Maybe they turn it around and it is what it is. Maybe they sell it to somebody else that wants to be the next steward of the thing,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't the game doesn't stop because the current owners made a really dumb decision and alienated their creative I'm going to say almost fanatical fan base because
Yeah, I would say that's they're fanatical.
prior to this, there people would get like upset, angry, downright violent about the things that they care about and love, right? It matters. And the this whole business of, you know, these are a lot of missteps when they released this um 1.1. They
Yes.
one they called it a draft, but they called it a draft after putting it in front of a bunch of people saying we need you to sign this now.
Sign this now. This
And
is
that's
December 28th,
yeah,
twenty
uh
ninth, or something.
be,
Or
beginning of December according to articles and stuff.
yeah, so like the beginning of December, we put out this piece of paper. This
Yeah.
is our new operating license. Sign it.
Yeah, and they did that with a bunch of big creators and as I understand it from all of the different leaks and looking at like Roll for Combat and stuff like that
Yep.
and the different articles that have come out, enough of the really big content creators decided not to sign it and they said, "Oh, okay, well we'll take it back to the drawing board." It doesn't mean it was a draft, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Um and then reading through it because we did get a chance to read through it as
Yeah.
in its original version and its updated versions. Um, it reads like and I said this on our Discord a lot. It reads as though um, somebody from a department had drafted it as a we'll try this before it ever went through any content controls,
Mhm.
and it made its way in front of people long before it should have. Because at some point, somebody should have looked at that and said, "Hey, do you remember what happened a decade ago when we tried to do this? Oh, there's nobody working here anymore that was around for. Oh, that's a problem, right? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, with the news that's come out recently, well, like I'm talking within the last 48 hours, Hasbro has lost or is cutting 1,000 jobs, like
well, that's their company as a
parent
whole
company. Yeah,
underperforming.
yeah,
Wizards is still doing okay, as its own independent branch, but yeah.
yeah, but like just in general, like there is a lot of kind of just the founder is upset from D&D Beyond.
Mhm.
Um there's all sorts of talks about the OGL, the GSL, like there's so many things that are going on and a lot of people talking about left and right things.
Now, we come to the next step, which is the post that, uh, came from nobody on the D&D Beyond website
Mhm.
that, super tone deaf, really gaslighty, like, it was really bad, like,
We rolled a nat 1.
"Remember, you didn't win, we both won." Like,
Oh,
all of
oh,
that stuff.
sorry. Just hearing that again, somebody say that out loud.
Yeah.
That is,
Some somebody whoever
oh,
wrote that should probably consider a different line of work. But then comes Kyle Brink, and
mm,
Kyle Brink is one of the executive producers for D&D. He
yes,
took over for Ray Winninger.
yes.
Ray Winninger, stepped down, like, into the
I,
summertime, and Kyle Brink got hired on a little bit before he did, and they kind of, like, transitioned through.
I'm thinking about making trading cards of these people just so I can remember their stats and things like that. So I
Yeah.
can just like have a thing of going like, okay, which person at the
For
D&D company is this?
for all intents and purposes, if you think of, like, Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford on the
Yeah,
design team, they would essentially report up to Kyle Brink now.
yeah,
So Jeremy Crawford's boss went on D&D Beyond and said, "Hey, look, uh, here's the thing. You know, I run the design team, like the D&D team specifically for Wizards of the
yeah.
Coast. I'm responsible for D&D. I'm sorry. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's the timeline we're gonna do it in. Here's here's what you've been asking for. Here it is. And we're gonna do it like we run a play test. And you read this and you give us feedback, and then we'll do something with it. We'll give you a different one, and you give us feedback, and we'll do something with it."
I
Which
heard that there was mixed results with that.
so the wording of OGL 1.2 that they released a week or two ago, um is 80% good. I've a bit of a business law background. I've
Mhm,
gone to school
mhm,
for it. Like I've done my fair share of contract creation and the rest.
mhm.
And reading through it, the majority of it sounds pretty good, right?
Okay.
It's the majority of it is specifically what the community was asking for.
Now, when you say 80%, there's obviously a glaring 20% that is still there.
There's a glaring 20%. Like, it makes sense that they want to update language, and they left
Mm,
themselves a bunch of provisions for things like communication and references and things where it's like, we can't put in you can't put into a license that all communications must happen by carrier pigeon,
no,
because what happens when the carrier pigeon is,
shot.
um well, is becomes, uh debunked or you know replaced by the next technology, and they're like, technology moves really fast. We don't know what kind of world we're going to be living in 10 years from now when it comes to interactions, so
Yeah.
we're leaving a portion of this open that we can change and update specifically, for this reason. Now the misstep that they did is they said we can change this whole section if we want to, and what they should have said is we can change specifically this section C communication part of it,
Okay.
in the event of things defunct. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Makes sense.
uh, so it's an editing thing, right? And that's what you have drafts for, is so you can pass it back and forth and catch things.
Miss Bast, stop hitting my microphone. I'm sorry, my cat is hitting my microphone with her tail at the moment. If you ever want to see Bast, check out our YouTube channel to see the live uncut edits of the podcast.
Yeah, Miss Past. Um, the other side of it is they specifically said, "Hey, we're not taking any revenue. We don't want any of your money. We just want to keep you creating stuff for our game, please."
Wait, they actually changed that part?
Yep, there's no revenue split. There's no license back requirements for it. So they had originally included a thing that said we get to use all of your stuff free and clear.
Mhm,
And the reason that they did that is because when Candlekeep came out, there was a lot of Candlekeep Mysteries was
mhm.
a community sourced adventure anthology, right? So you had a lot of different creators putting in stuff, and then some of the work that was submitted had to be changed. And then they changed it and they put it in, and there was some hiccups, right?
Right.
So they specifically wanted to come in and say, we don't want to get sued because our stuff looks like your stuff. How they presented that was, we own your stuff and we can do with it whatever we want, and we can
Right.
change these terms at any time. And it's really hard if you're working as a content creator. This is something that we do,
Yeah.
and I would be very hesitant to put together a book and start a Kickstarter if I had to sign an agreement that specifically said um, that they can change the terms of the agreement with 30 days notice. So if we get 4 months into a Kickstarter and we've invested tens of thousands of dollars
Yep.
into printing and paying artists and doing whatever, and Wizards specifically says, "Hey, I saw a tweet that you made and we don't like it," you no longer have access to the license to put out that product. So
Here's the 30 days notice.
here's your 30 days notice for that warehouse full of books that you have printed already that you cannot sell now legally. So eat it. Because that's what the original proposed OGL draft would have opened them up to. Whether or not they would ever
Right.
do that is besides the point. And we talk about this a lot when it comes down to contracts and procedures. If
Yeah.
you can't ever bank on, well, we would never do that. You If you would never do that, then don't put it into the contract.
And that's where we have the language difficulties, the things that people are getting
Yep.
upset about. And you know what? Rightfully so.
You have an
It's
entire community of people that like reading between the lines, understanding the fine print, taking advantage of the wording in the fine print, and you've taught us over the last few decades to take down the big bad evil guy. Let's work together and take down the big
the
bad
big
evil guy.
evil guy. Yeah. Well, it's also like, why are kids so rebellious these days? And you look at the Hunger Games and
Who are you trying to
other
kill
such
now?
things. But I'm going to open myself another beer here, and I'm going
You know,
to
that sounds like an excellent idea.
transition into a slight kind of beer story here, which kind
Hmm,
of is slightly to the side.
I like that. Which
Um,
which one are you going to have now?
I'm going to have the classic
Tremens.
Tremens, Tremens, which is their classic Belgian blonde.
Hmm.
The Belgian blonde, 8.5%, and I'm actually going to try and pour this actually kind of correctly. I am a certified beer server. I swear to God. Oh, God damn it.
You
I don't
know,
know what is with
I'm
my pouring these days.
I'm gonna go a little off elephant,
Oh,
and I'm gonna try some cow.
the
I'm
cow in
going
the room.
I'm going to try Alley Cat's milk chocolate porter from
Ooh.
Sebastian Farms, and
Moo.
it's a little fancy.
It is a little fancy. And you know
And
what? The weird part about that is it doesn't look like any Alley Cat label, and that
yeah,
bothers me slightly.
yes, we were gonna cover some of that.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that a segue?
Could it be? All right,
Could
does
it
this look
be?
like chocolate milk? It, disturbingly enough, kind of looks like chocolate milk.
It does. It's the worst part of it.
Huh.
So, for the
Okay.
viewers at home on the podcast, which you can catch on Spotify and other fine podcast
Oh,
establishments.
you know, that is an interesting point, and I'm going to read out the specifics of that, if you
Yes,
don't
please.
mind,
If
sir.
no, not at all. Please do.
So, I said it last time, and I'll say it this time. Um, all episodes of Roll for Beer, now available on 6 platforms. Interestingly enough, the uh, our audience base, primarily Canadian, slightly American, surprisingly Mexican. Like
I'm sorry, what?
13% of our podcast consumers are listening from Mexico.
Mucho gracias.
Yes, I did totally rinse out the mug
Salute.
before I poured into it.
Yes.
So you can find us where all fine podcasts are consumed, except for on Apple Podcasts. We're fighting right now.
You
Um,
know why.
yeah, you know what you did, Apple.
You know what you did, Apple.
Spotify, you can find us on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, still a thing. I iHeartRadio is still out there doing interesting musician interviews. I found yesterday.
Hell yes.
Yeah, and also podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Pandora and Sirius XM,
Hell yes.
as well as Stitcher. If you're interested, you can look up Roll for Beer, a Dungeons and Dragons podcast where all podcasts are consumed. Uh, if where you get your podcasts doesn't have it, drop a message into either our Discord or comment on the video, and I'll get it up into different places. Except for Apple right now, Apple. You know what you did.
You know what you did. Like and subscribe.
That always helps. All right. We've
Um,
got a segue, and I've got milk chocolate porter.
segue, we're going to be talking about a little bit on the whole branding kind of idea here a bit. But hold on. James has a concerned face as he took his first sips of his beer.
I don't understand.
Yeah, there we go. That was what I was looking for.
I don't. So branding. When I look at this can,
Yes.
I see a cow
Mm-hmm.
and it's wrapped up in a blanket and it's
Mm-hmm.
got earmuffs on
Yep.
and it's using a devil tongue to lick a straw that it drinks chocolate milk from.
Yep. Almost
And
like that Nesquik, isn't it?
it's a delicious dark beer combining the roasted malt flavors of a classic porter with cocoa and lactose to create a
Yes.
chocolate brew that is both bold in flavor and creamy smooth. I will say it is a
Smooth.
creamy beer.
Mhm.
It tastes like I'm drinking milk and water mixed together disproportionately, and there's maybe brown food coloring in it because it doesn't taste like anything.
And here's where we start talking about branding for beer. Um, can art, design, all of this. Like this is one of the biggest things because here's the thing, James. You bought that can
I
because
most certainly did.
you saw the art and you were like, "Yes."
My wife bought that can.
Your wife saw that art and was like, "That looks interesting."
That is also why, when we were going through Wine and Beyond in Calgary on Tuesday night, I walked past a bunch of things for Analog Brewing from
Yep.
Snake Lake,
Yep.
and they had two, like snack and it starts in a tavern. I bought those
Yep.
beers because the cans were cool, not
Yep.
because I knew what was in them. Because I was like, yoink!
Yes, and that is called brand recognition.
It's called poor impulse control, but I mean,
Also that, but brand recognition. Work with me,
yeah,
James. So analog. Analog has this wonderful, like, Analog Brewing Company, from our friends up in Edmonton, is a great group of people who make some awesome, nerdy, fun beers.
Mhm.
They have this retro art style on their cans where they do pixelated art that looks like
Hmm.
it's straight out from a Super Nintendo. Um, Absolutely wonderful, fun products. And James is about to hold up one of the cans to the screen, and look, it's pixel art. Who doesn't like pixel art? And fun story, Snake Lake Snack is the brewery I used to work for.
Mhm.
Great group of people, absolutely love them, but it
So
is very much analog.
okay, so I have a question
Yeah.
because I looked at this and I saw Snack and Snake Lake Brewing Company.
Yes.
So Analog and Snake Lake are 2 different
They're 2 different
breweries?
companies.
Okay,
This is called a collaboration.
it is. It says collaboration with Analog.
Snake Lake Brewing. So when a collab happens, it is an excuse for the brewery that is collabing with them to go up to that brewery, have beers with them, and then slightly discuss what beer they're making.
That's fair.
um, but I mean, the brewers hang out, they get to talk to each other, they come up with fun ideas, and they make cool products. Um, that beer there is a cold IPA, which is a IPA that goes under the same scrutinies as a lager. So, meaning that they age for a particular amount of time, and they're fermented. Excuse me, I burped there. Fermented at a colder temperature. What that does is to give it that bit more of that lagery crisp bite.
I I will say, you and I talked about this because,
Hmm.
um, Village Brewery in Calgary is probably one of my favorite breweries on
Yeah,
the planet. They make a
100%.
blacksmith, Village Blacksmith, top 3 favorite beers of all time.
Oh yeah,
They are my
it
jam.
they're one of my favorite beers to sell because it is so easy to drink, but it gets people into those darker beers.
Yeah. And, like, Erdinger Dunkelweizen, probably, like, right on par with that. This, I picked up because of the can, specifically, and I'm
100%.
like I saw Snake Lake on it, and I'm like, "Oh, Riley used to work there."
Oh
So I
yeah,
picked it up, and also because they had the cool pixel art. I was distracted by the pixel art, and I didn't notice that this was an IPA. If I had seen that it was an IPA, I wouldn't have bought it
and that's fair. And
because
people have particular feelings for styles. I'll have them when I come over. It's fine.
I'm gonna drink them because I bought them. If you come
Yeah.
over, you can have one too. But
Mhm. But we're talking, but this is about brand recognition.
yeah.
And there are certain things. I can recognize a analog beer when I see it. I
Mhm.
recognize a zero issue beer when I see it. I see the zero issue right on top. I see the Snake Lake symbol right where it needs to be.
You see a
Very
delirium pink elephant, you know it's a
You know
delirium.
it's delirium.
Like, you know.
This is very important things. People are at this moment, there are a lot of rebrands going on. There's a lot of people who are now reaching that point here in Alberta where they're talking about rebrands, where they're talking about changing it up to try and bring that audience back or bring new people.
You know, that reminds me of, um, the 90s times
Yeah.
when Cinta, the Charlotte Ear, Eyes, Nose, and Throat,
Mhm.
Association, they did what it was known as the Pepsi Challenge,
Yes, the
where,
Pepsi
you know,
challenge.
and it's interesting to me
Mhm.
that, that in a blind taste test, it's like, does this taste which one is this? But also, if you have something that is in a sheer black can with a
Yep.
golden stamp on it with just a very simple label, like, I'm going to use Gibson's as an example of a whiskey,
Yep.
right? I like Gibson's whiskey. It tastes good. Is it the best whiskey on the planet? Probably not, but it's pretty good. Like, it's pretty good. Versus something that had neon, like, waves on it and cartoon characters fighting a monkey. Now, some people are gonna look at that and be like, "Oh, this tastes really, like, kitschy and cheap," even if they didn't know what kind of whiskey was in the bottle, because
Yeah,
brand perception affects your tastes. It's scientifically proven that your perception of the container that it comes in affects how the thing tastes. How your food looks impacts how well you think it tastes, or how
exactly.
good you think it tastes.
And this is going to be bringing me to this whole brand thing because there are a few breweries in town and a few breweries in the province that have made many changes over the
Mhm.
years, and a couple that are doing more recently. I'm going to use Apex as an example.
Uh,
Apex,
that's what I drank last time I had their
yes.
Apex lager. That they have bitchin' artwork on their cans.
Oh my God, their stuff is awesome.
Mhm.
They've had three rebrands.
Okay.
They were originally Bench Creek Brewing.
Okay. Oh, they changed the whole name of the brewery.
Whole name, they changed from Bench Creek Brewing. Again, that was because of a very interesting issue, which I can talk about on a different episode, not what I'm talking about today.
Mhm.
They then switched to Apex Predator.
Yeah.
They dropped the Predator and they just became Apex. Predator has a very, of course, negative connotation if you use that word because
Mhm.
Predator.
Yep.
Um, and they've just become Apex. They've changed their art, they have changed everything, and they've become now a very solid and cohesive company. You can see an Apex beer and you look at it and you now go, ah, I know that company.
Yeah.
That's Apex.
Well, and having consistent artwork across the cans helps too. Like,
Hmm.
we were talking to Mark about this from Zero Issue,
Yeah.
and like the artwork for the cans is friggin' just bitchin'. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's just really good. And Apex, I feel, strikes the same sort of balance there.
Yeah. Very like three colors,
Yeah.
the yellow, their primary color for that can, and then the white or like the different color for the lettering.
Mhm.
Very just like this is Apex.
Yeah. I I was not um I was not happy when I saw what Dandy was doing here in town. And like, I'm never gonna speak ill of beer that I really like, because
Yeah.
Dandy Brewing Company in Calgary makes really amazing beer.
And don't get
They're
me wrong. I think that Dandy is a terrific company and
Mhm.
I really like their stuff. This branding is very different.
It's
And
it is a big departure. Like, I
mhm,
latched on to um that
that octopus is
octopus and a
great.
monocle and a top hat. That's great. That is it
Brilliant.
is it is novel. It is really good. And I saw some of the different artwork, and it looks like Warhead's candy wrappers. And I'm
And
like, I it this isn't really this
Dandy.
isn't it doesn't feel like Dandy. Like, I know they do
And
their pop cans and stuff
yep,
with that artwork, and that's kind of a cool thing, because their pop is very, like, that's what you would
100%.
expect on a pop. But I liked the whole, like, when you think of a dandy, you think of somebody well put together, right? The
Slightly
dandy man,
hipsterish.
maybe, like,
Yeah.
well put together, well groomed. It's a thing. And
Yeah, and
the mascot that they had and the branding they had, it felt really good.
yeah, and here's what I will say positive about what they're doing with their branding. They're bringing everything under one roof.
Yep.
Dandy with the lowercase d. I understand that part of it. They have brought everything under the same roof. The pop,
Mhm.
their tap room, and their beer. It is now under Dandy.
Yeah.
However, We will see what happens, and I think I like the art on their cans. I do like it. I
Mhm.
think it is fun, it is different. Hell, one of their cans reminds me of one of my favorite video games, Persona 5. Like, their IPA, their new IPA, totally reminds me of Persona 5, and I
Hmm.
fucking love that, but it doesn't feel like Dandy to me.
Yeah.
But we have to embrace change because that's
Yep.
what's important.
Well, and here's the thing. I've got a marketing background,
Mhm.
and I depending on the size of the business, there is an entirely reasonable um, expectation that a company is going to change their marketing over time based on consumer feedback, based on market trends, based on so for all intents and purposes, like they came out with their Dandy Pop
Yes.
that has that specific art style.
Very
Maybe,
graffiti-ish.
yeah, maybe that art style, making that change, or maybe that contributed to a massive uptick in sales. And so they're trying to port that over into another avenue that they have. That could be the case, right? We
100%.
we don't know from the outside looking in, but it doesn't feel the same. It's like I love Dino Sour beer.
Yes.
One, it tastes really good and I really like sour things. And it's
The beer.
fun and it's weird and it's got dinosaurs on it. So it's an immediate win. Do I expect that it is going to be a top shelf beer when I look at that cartoon dinosaur on that thing? Probably not. I would have expected looking at Dandy's previous branding to consume a refined, groomed, superior product versus the kind of graffiti art style that's on it. And maybe that's just like, years of ingrained expectations on branding and things like that. And I got to get away from that mindset, but it's hard to shake that,
Well,
right?
and you know what? Here's where this topic collides with our previous topic of D&D. The whole concept of what D&D is shifting,
Yep.
and that's an okay thing.
Yep.
But we have to accept what's happening, and if we make a change to a different system, if we make a change to a different tabletop RPG, that's okay because we're
Mhm.
still playing role-playing games together.
Yep. Well, and again, like I touched on earlier, it's like rollerblading. You're going rollerblading. You're not going inline skating. We're playing D&D. It doesn't mean that we're playing Wizards of the Coast D&D. It means that we're playing, whichever tabletop system we like. There's amongst my D&D books, there's a copy of the Pathfinder core rule set right there for Pathfinder 2. And we have a bunch of things like on our channel after starting next week, we're doing Indentured Adventures. We're doing which is a port of 5e. Um, we're
After
doing
that,
Tales from the Loop, which is amazing. If you like if you like a
Stranger
a Stranger Things style game
Things.
and you wanted to have a little bit more mechanical grittiness than something like Lasers and Feelings, Tales from the Loop is a great system.
It's a really neat system, and God, I love the freaking just setting.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
really good.
god, this
The
is
TV show,
oh,
uh, uh, my wife and I have gotten through a couple episodes of it so far, and it's
oh.
good. It's good. Um, low sci-fi.
Mm.
'Cause she keeps saying, like, "I'm expecting a jump scare, like, when's it gonna, like, get scary?" And I'm like, "It's not. It's not supposed to be scary, it's supposed to be introspective, right? It's supposed
And
to be weird and, like, it's good."
there were 2 episodes from that series, from that 1st season, because apparently there is a 2nd season coming out, which
Yep.
I'm kind of I
This summer, it should be out.
really hope they take lessons from what they learned and they change the music. Oh my god, I hope they change the
Well, they
music.
they had a composer do, like, 3 tracks, and they use it in every episode forever.
I know. Oh my god. No, hire the people who did Stranger Things. Your show will be amazing. Holy crap. Anyway, composing myself. Um, there were 2 episodes. The Echo
Yep.
and the first episode,
Yeah.
Loop. Those are the 2 episodes from the entire series that I'm saying are amazingly worth it.
Well, we'll get there. We haven't gotten to the Echo just yet.
Um, oh, oh,
It's on Amazon Prime.
there's
If it's
yeah,
worth watching. Like it's if you like sci-fi stuff,
if you like
it's worth
sci-fi,
watching.
if you just want the idea of what this whole thing is, weird.
It's it's also worth saying, like, um, so last summer I built a gaming system
Mhm.
that is completely SRD system agnostic, and I'm gonna pull this back a little bit. Gonna go past 10 o'clock for a little bit, probably another like 10 minutes or so. So, um, when all of this when all the shenanigans broke with OGL, a lot of folks are like, "Well, what are we supposed to do?" You know, there's a lot of people's livelihoods tied up and stuff. And the interesting thing, the author of Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which if you've never played Thirsty Sword Lesbians,
Terrific
just
system.
fantastic.
Terrific.
Um, uh, put out a good article on like, here's why you never needed the OGL in the first place. One, because you can't really copyright or trademark game mechanics. The OGL was there to give you peace of mind that you weren't going to be using anything that they would be trademarked later and potentially get yourself into issues.
I can name 5 gaming systems that do not use OGL that are absolutely terrific and will
Mhm.
keep your table satisfied for years.
Yeah. The the thing is Pathfinder 2nd edition did not need to include the OGL in the back of their book. But they did. They didn't need to, but they did because it was easy to do and it opened it up for other people to have a peace of mind.
Mhm.
You can bet your bottom dollar that Paizo's not including it in anything anymore. They're going to include the ORC, the Open RPG Creative License,
Orc,
which
orc,
is
orc, orc,
yeah,
orc,
that's when you have the opportunity to name something, name it ORC. Like
orc, 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 orc.
that's just good. Um,
Come on, you gits. Let's get at it.
but
I'm sorry.
Wizards responded to that with adding the SRD to the Creative Commons. So the SRD is that
Mhm, mhm.
rolling license that might be updated that you can use to refer to specific game mechanics. They
Yep.
couldn't copyright the game mechanics before, but now you can use them as a part of the Creative Commons, and you don't have to worry about the OGL or getting sued because it's I can go in and use Cleric as a base for things or
Yes.
the base game rules for stuff. Uh, they didn't need to, and they really didn't have to, but they did.
No, but they did.
So that's fine. Um, the actual OGL for publishing, a lot of it makes sense from a business perspective. Like in the grand scheme of things, you don't want if somebody's making a product that is tangentially related to your company,
Yes.
you want to make sure that it is something that you approve of.
Yes.
That makes sense. You want to have language in there that protects you against that.
Yeah.
If somebody's making products that are, you know, negative in nature or, you know, pulling a new school TSR where they're like, I almost feel bad quoting this, but like the latest TSR beta test specifically included language of like, don't show this to Wizards employees because their racial traits were like, if you're of African descent, you have like negatives to intelligence and stuff like that. Like really horrendous shit. Like really bad. And yeah, we just back away from those kinds of things because fuck those people.
I'm on the other side of my room.
Yeah, fuck those people. Like I wouldn't want to be associated with that kind of stuff either. So I get
God
where they're
no.
coming from. But they swung it like a hammer when they should have used a pen,
Yes.
right? And I'm hopeful because in the grand scheme of things, Wizards of the Coast is a business that likes making money. And they will seed to the point of what made us the most money? Letting the community do our work for us. Let's continue to let the community do our jobs in the grand, like, you know,
Yeah.
the bulk of things, right? Uh, you don't need to build community brand awareness and goodwill. The community is doing that for you. No other brand gets that, right? Unless you let
Mhm.
the community own a part of what you're doing, and that's the way you do it. You want me to publish a book and put the creator badge thing on it to show that it's not a D&D product, but that it's a D&D like third party thing? That's an entirely reasonable thing to look at and ask. You want to
Yeah.
include a license into a thing to say, "Hey, by the way, we're using some of this stuff that we don't own." That's an entirely reasonable thing to say. But the stance of like virtual tabletops that they took of like what's his name? It's not Ryan Cow. Um what's his what's his Chris Cow. Chris Cow?
Yeah, yeah. Yep, yep, yep.
Cow or Kale?
Yeah.
He's the current vice president of Wizards of the Coast. This is a this is a fella that has never played D&D before,
Yeah.
but he's like, "I played World of Warcraft," and that's kind of the same thing, right? They got real bent out of shape about Solasta.
Solasta.
You ever play Solasta?
No. Oh,
Solasta
that's
so
the Last Crown or something, right?
yeah. So it it's a really good Kickstarted game that uses the OGL, the SRD for 5e.
Yeah.
And it's basically the closest thing that we've seen to a 5e video game, where it rolls for initiative and it uses core mechanics and blah 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 blah. It's really good. It's really fun. And but it's a one-player game. You play through the game. And then they release some DLC for it that creates a map creator. So you could go in and make your own adventures and dungeons and populate it with whatever you like.
Sorry, I'm gonna go on a slight tangent here for just 1 second. Literally just to bother Ken.
Oh,
I'm just gonna bother Ken. That's it. He wants
okay.
into this podcast.
I see.
Mhm.
That that
Mhm.
that's fine. He can chat with the YouTubes.
Yeah, you can
It's
chat with
fine.
the YouTubes. Yeah, he doesn't need to be on the podcast. It's
Yeah,
fine.
he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Solasta releases a DLC that lets you build dungeons and
Mhm.
program it. So you have
Oh.
players that go through and they get to a door and it prompts you with text and you can set a DC and they have to roll against it. And it gives them prompts and blah 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 blah
Yeah, interesting.
blah.
Almost like it's creating oh my god.
It's a virtual tabletop.
It's a
And
virtual tabletop.
you can do it DM agnostic where you program it ahead of time and players can run through a module together.
Mhm.
And you could invite up to 4 people into a LAN for it to do this thing, and all of a sudden you have a digital tabletop that's doing replacing the imagination aspect of your
With
tabletop game,
everything.
and all of that language is explicitly used in the virtual tabletop policy that Wizards
Interesting.
put out. Now, they're not mad at Roll20 for
No.
their little animations of, like, drag your mouse along the screen and make a laser beam go foosh foosh.
Foosh foosh.
They're mad at folks like Foundry that didn't already have licensing and stuff in place for Wizards of the Coast and official products and stuff,
Right.
where you can literally just program your D&D game in, and based on um, token placement and interactions, the the programming in Foundry is solid. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot. Like if I
I
didn't
have
already
used
have,
it.
yeah, we use it on our weekly D&D game at work.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Um, they if I didn't have so much invested already in Roll20, like Roll20 is an awesome system because it's really straightforward. It gives me everything that I need to show you guys art,
Yep.
to simulate a battle map,
Yep.
to give you some awesome background music that I can either put in or like open source.
Yep.
It's good.
But Foundry is fucking awesome.
It is. It is. Foundry is also daunting because there's a billion things that you can do with it if you take the time to do it. And if you
And
know how to code, all the better.
Oh yeah,
right?
and
Like,
and
it's
and I mean, we could go on forever on the topic of how awesome Foundry is, but you
yeah.
know what? Maybe that's a topic for another time
You know,
because
I
we're coming up to the end here. I think.
yeah, virtual tabletops next time, I think.
You know what? That's actually a good topic, and you know what? I'm just gonna think of a beer topic here quickly, and I think I've talked about IBU. Have I talked about IBUs? I
Mhm.
think I have. Yep, I
That was
have.
last
I've.
episode.
Was it I? No,
It was indeed. I'm like, "How many IBUs would this be?"
no. I thought it was water last episode.
Oh, it was water. It was the
It
one
was
before that
water.
was
It was the
IBU.
one
Yep,
before that. Okay, yeah.
yep.
I will have a different one.
That's fair. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
But
There'll be a beer topic of some sort.
thank you, everybody, for, tuning in tonight.
Yes.
Riley will get some editing in, and this will be up as a podcast here in a certain amount of time, an
It's
indiscriminate amount of time.
I am getting up early tomorrow and I'm actually editing it tomorrow morning. That is
You're a
literally my only goal tomorrow morning.
you are a better man than I.
It's
I'm not doing that.
mm.
I'm a couple of weeks behind on editing our regular episodes, so
And
we'll
also
get there.
hi to Ken, our good
Appar
friend Ken.
apparently hi to Ken. Ken
I
will be
you know
participating in our next games,
and
for our indentured adventures, and
he's
that'll
gonna
be good.
look for a way to kill me and it's fine.
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. If you
Cheers.
can, give a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps out the channel. And feel free to share it on your various social media platforms because it helps us get an audience and then deliver more content and all of those things. There's also links in the doobly doo. If you are listening to this as a podcast, you'd have to browse over to YouTube to see our doobly doo, for if you want to donate to the channel, you want to buy us a beer, that sort of thing. The podcast is free. There's no monetization turned on for it, so you will never see us behind a paywall or anything like that. But
Nope.
if you like what you hear, and you feel like buying us a beer, there's links down below on the YouTube side. So,
And thank you also to Delirium being the big elephant in the room for us tonight.
yay, the big elephant in the room. I'm probably gonna drink another one of these tonight
Oh
because
my
it was
goodness,
pretty tasty.
they're very good beers.
I'll
I
go.
mean, I didn't even talk about the Tremens, but it's damn good. It is just a lager and it's 8.5%, or it's a Belgian blonde, 8.5%. Damn good. Enjoy it. Have a wonderful night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.